Welcome back to the Self Trust Solution Podcast. I'm your host, Dawn Lede, and today I'm joined by Shannon Russell, and she's a business coach, speaker, and author of Start Your Second Act: How to Change Careers, Launch a Business, and Create Your Best Life. She's also the host of the Second Act Success podcast and helps women build businesses that create freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment. Shannon's self trust story is about choosing alignment over achievement, not once, but multiple times. From leaving what many would consider a dream job to become a present mom and figure out what was next, to later selling a successful business at its peak to go all in on the work she felt most called to do. This is a conversation about reinvention, identity, and trusting yourself when the path forward isn't fully clear, but the pull is. Shannon, I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me, Dawn. I'm looking forward to this.
And for listeners, that Shannon and I have been trying to connect for a while now. And so it's so great that we're able to do it now because I really just respect and love the work that you do. And I'm glad that we finally were able to make the connection.
Me too. I know. Hopefully many more connections and time to work together in the future.
Right? Totally. Well, take us back, if you will, to this season when you had what you called the dream job.
Yeah. From the age of, maybe 5, as a very little girl, I wanted to work in Hollywood. I just wanted to be working in television. And then I accomplished that, after college. I went on to work in New York City and Los Angeles. So really living my dream job for about 16 years. And then I became a mom. And then I became a mom again. And I think that second time around is when I really was like, I don't know if I can keep doing this with the long hours and the travel and the hustle. And maybe there's something else I can do with all of this past skills and experience. And that's when I really set out to figure it out and start my second act.
What did it look like for you when you were sort of, I don't know if you would call it wrestling with that, but what was kind of happening internally during that time?
I was actually just thinking about this recently. It's after the birth of my first son, we were in Los Angeles, and then we quickly moved back to the East Coast to get support from my family and continue to work in New York City. And it was during that time where I missed my son's first birthday because I
Mm,
was away on a shoot. And I was just thinking about this moment recently. And I was like, I think that is when the wheels started turning. And I
yeah.
started thinking, like, I don't know how much more I want to miss. And then with the birth of my second son, or actually when I was, pregnant with him, I had a few aha moments of like, you know what? I just don't care anymore to meet this celebrity or to do this red carpet. And
Mm,
those were the things where I started saying, you know what? No, you guys go do it. I'm going to take the bus home to the suburbs and be with my that the time 3-year-old. And when I was on maternity leave, I really did wrestle with the identity piece and leaving what I had always worked so hard for, but I knew there could be something else, and I just had to really struggle to figure out what that was.
yeah. I love that so much because oftentimes we can think that just because we're good at something, because it was a dream of ours, that we have to stick it out. And the truth is, everything can have a closing chapter, right? It doesn't mean that it was wrong. It doesn't mean that it wasn't amazing during that time, but that's where we can wrestle with it. It's like, you knew you were ready to move on. You didn't want to miss any more things with your children. But there's this little tug of what these beliefs we have around what we should do when we have something that's great. We should hold on.
Right, you're on that path and you're
Yeah.
working towards it and you get so wrapped up in it. And I
Yeah.
think for me, it was a moment of saying, "You know what? I accomplished that dream. I can check that box." And I
Good.
allowed myself to say, "I can celebrate that, but I want another adventure. I'm still young. I'm ready to keep working and creating new things." And that mindset shift helped me
Huge.
realize that my career wasn't, my identity, and I could
Yeah.
think about it and be open to something else, even though I had no idea what that would be.
So good. Yeah. So what kind of, if any, fears or doubt came to play? Because you're leaving the what you know, the security of a job. And we have many listeners who want to do that. They want to leave their job and go full in on their businesses. So, what was kind of going on for you there?
I think I was, secretly over those, couple years leading up to that, saving a little extra and just kind of, getting myself in a place where maybe I could afford to, step into something else. But it was really hard because I didn't have the support of my husband and family and friends. They all
Mm,
thought I was, just making a rash decision. And I think that was really hard. So I felt very alone and in a silo trying to figure it out. So there was fears of not having that support and then fears of, well, what is this going to look like? What can a television producer do anywhere else? So a lot of fears of that. And then a little bit of the fear of like what other people will think because everyone, especially in that industry, you're known by your name, you're known for what project you just worked on and who you know and all of that. So there was a lot of that identity piece but I just started looking at the kids and focusing on the why that I had in front of me. And my why was to be present and not miss dinner, bath, and bed every night. And
mm,
so when I focused on that, it brought me back to, okay, this is the new path I'm walking. And I tried to suppress those fears or deal with those as it, they
yeah.
came up.
But what was that path? Because you didn't really know, right?
I didn't know.
How did
And
you find it?
so Well, what's funny is my show, the television show I was producing at the time, got canceled while I was on maternity leave. So that was kind of the, universe telling me, okay, well, maybe this is the time to think of what else. So I ended up looking for work. I started, actually, I enrolled in a graduate school program, thinking I'll be a teacher. And then I got a 9 to 5 job close to home, and so I was throwing things at the wall, Don. I was just like, "Well, maybe this'll work, and I'll fit myself into what I think I should be doing." And I
Mm,
had the pressure of knowing that we couldn't be a one-income household, so it was a lot of that, but as I started trying those things, they did not feel right, and it just wasn't the thing, so I threw things at the wall for about a year or so, and then finally, I just had this moment of, I have to produce my own life. I have to start a business that will give me the ability to create my hours, have that creativity and flexibility, and produce a business, right? I started like aligning my past skills to what it would take to run a business. And I realized there was a lot of correlation. And it was a leap of faith. And I got my husband on board and I said, okay, we're gonna open a business.
wow. Do you think that that spaghetti throwing time was necessary, or how do you think
I
about it now?
I do,
Yeah.
and it's funny because I always say, like, when I work with clients, I wanna save you that time so that you're not wasting the time and stress, but for me, it was great because I could, again, like, check the box and say, "You know what? I really don't wanna be a teacher."
Mhm.
So, as much as this might fit into what I thought I wanted my life to look like, it didn't feel right, so I could check that off, and same thing with the 9 to 5, it was a toxic environment, and I was like, "If this is what a 9 to 5 is, I don't want it." And, so it was a learning process about
Mhm.
myself a lot. And I think
I
it
love it.
showed my husband too that, like, and my family that I was trying. I wasn't just saying,
Mhm.
"I'm gonna sit back and watch soap operas." And, I was trying to figure it out, and I learned a lot from it. I learned what I wanted throughout the process. So, yeah, I think it was a really worthwhile experience for myself.
I love it, and it sort of shows you've done that from even the work and becoming a mom, like, "I'm just gonna try it. I'm
Yes.
gonna figure it out." And we get so much information about ourselves, about what we like. It eliminates a lot of second guessing later because we've tried it. We have that answer. We don't have to spin and wonder. I
Yes.
think it's so useful, and I love the way that you look at those trials, if you will, or those tests. So
Yeah, and even, going to, that master's program I was in, it was for education, and the first business I opened was a STEM education business for kids. So I always
mm.
say I spent all that money that led me to this business that really fit my life for that, those first, I ran it for about 8 years.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about that business and how you look at it now as leading up to what you do currently.
Yeah. That's such a good question, and it was people always ask, "Well, how did you go from TV to this education business?" but it was a franchise. And so when I started thinking, one night I was playing with my 3-year-old and he was building with Legos and he was just very calm and focused. And I was like, "Ooh, I can actually walk out of the room. Like I can go be with the baby or I can go make dinner." And there was something to that imagination and that creativity. And I said, "Oh, what if I open a center where kids can build with Legos and get creative and think like engineers?" And as I did my research, I found out that there was a franchise that was already doing that. And so for me, I just started having conversations with the CEO and the team over there. And it just seemed like a perfect fit for me and what I was thinking about. And the fact that I had 2 little kids who could come with me, to teach classes. And I could, really build the business from my house at that time. And so I just took the leap of faith. I opened that business that no one in my state even knew about. But I was able to use those production skills and grow it. And so I saw that, yeah, this is actually working. And that just was my fuel to keep going.
Mm. So you have this idea for a business and it come to find out it already exists. So you can actually just step in without all of that pre-work, not as much capital for sure,
Yeah.
and do something that is meaningful as well.
Yeah, and I always look at franchises as a business in a box, if you
Yeah.
will. And so, it's I'm so pro franchise in that sense of especially if you just want to step in, you want to learn about business. And that is exactly what it taught me. I ended up in like the top 2 or 3 of all of the franchisees in the whole organization because it was laid out for me and I just followed the plan and I was good at running that business and building the relationships in my community and teaching the kids and all of that. So it was such a great experience and I didn't have to do it all from scratch. And now I know what it's like to start a business from scratch and I know what it's like to do it
Oh.
from the franchise model. And, both are really valuable, but super different.
And all of this experience from television to mom parenthood to
Yeah.
this franchise to your business now all make you so um knowledgeable and able to help the clients that you work with now. So
Thank
tell us
you.
about this. You sold that business. What did that feel like?
That was such a very odd moment. I got to a place where my coaching, which I started my coaching business while running the
Mm,
franchise, because I had a big team and it was kind of running a little bit without me there, which was nice. So I could concentrate on my coaching clients. And then I got to a point where my heart was kind of, I wanted to be with the other women I was coaching a little bit more. And so I said, you know what? Like they say to sell when the business is at the top. So let me put it on the market and see. And it took about a year to find the right buyers. And then I had a lot of apprehension of I'm selling my baby. This was
mm,
my baby that I ran. But I started realizing as long as my team still had jobs and it was still serving my community, then I was doing the right thing and I was passing it along to someone else. And then I was able to put all of my energy into my coaching. So very weird experience to have to kind of pass along something that you built, but I was very proud of it. And again, it was another great experience to learn how to sell a business. So,
and it is very much like parenthood because now you can't stay they don't stay
no.
under your roof, right? Forever. And so
Yes. And it's fun when I'm like in because it's such a community based business. And when I'm out and about and people will say, oh, my child was here, or that, it's still going and it's still doing well. And so I'm very proud of the new
yeah.
owners as well.
Yeah. So then you go all in on your coaching business and tell us a little bit about
Yeah, so I just realized in running that first business that there were a lot of other women who would come to me and say, "Well, how did you do that? How did you stop
Mhm.
having that long commute into the city? And can you help me?" So it started really organically, and really, I help women, create businesses. Just get your business off the ground, and then or some will still work with me to help with scaling. And so, really, it's that early stage of business and I just love it. I love saying, well, let's look at your skills and your experience that you've had in your career. And how can we mold that into a new business, doing what you really want and what you're good at, and leave all that other stuff that you didn't like behind? So it's really a fun kind of puzzle to work on with my clients. And I love it. I get to work with people all over the world from the comfort of my house, which is really
right?
amazing. Yeah.
It's the best.
Yeah, you
And
know.
also, you're connecting them, and this is really important because people think when they're starting a business, uh, I work with people who are a little bit further along,
Right.
but when they're starting out, often they think of it as starting from scratch. And you're reminding them that you have a lot to start with. You're not
Yeah.
actually starting from scratch. You're starting from experience. You're starting from skill. There's new things you will learn, of course.
Oh, yeah.
You're not starting from scratch.
No, and I love that story piece too. Like, I love looking at that past story and finding those threads that connect to what it is that you want to do now and
Mhm.
forming that story because I think that's so important when you're putting yourself out there for the first time. And Don, like having that story, even how you kind of talked about my story, like it does all kind of come together to lead you to where you are. And when we put it together and it's a little like bio, if you will, and they look at it and they go, "Wow, it makes so much sense." And it's not from scratch. They feel more empowered and confident to say,
Mhm.
"I can do this." Yeah.
Yeah. We just have sometimes this muted view of ourselves,
Mhm.
and we focus on the gaps and we focus on what we haven't done or what someone else has done that we have. And over here on the other shoulder, this beautiful evidence how powerful, capable you are, and you have the capacity to change and grow always. So
Yeah.
it's so good to be able to walk people through that and see that in themselves and then go out and create amazing things in the world that then gives other people permission to do the same. It's the best.
It's a domino effect, yes.
It is. So for someone who does feel pulled forward, like pulled toward maybe is a better way to say it, a second act, but is afraid to step away, what would you want to say to them?
I say first, give yourself grace. Like, know that it's okay to feel this pull and just explore it. The first thing I often tell clients is, make a list of your skills and then cross out anything that you no longer want to do. And so now you're staring at this page of things that you really enjoy and that you're good at and start thinking about potential business ideas
Mm.
and what correlates. And then research those ideas because I have had clients come to me saying, I want to open a Pilates studio or I want to do XYZ. And then as we look at what the role of that business and being that business owner is, they say, oh, I didn't know it involved this. Like, that's not really what I want. And so then we have to scratch that and start looking at other options. So I think that research phase in the beginning and really getting to know what it is that you do want to do is really valuable before you just leap into something and hope that it works.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yes, I also would be curious to know if you if you see where people really haven't taken the time to do that
A lot of times.
and
Yeah.
are sometimes surprised by what they like and don't like. They come in maybe thinking they want one thing and then realize it's actually something else.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, that Pilates studio, that is a client I had a couple of years ago, and she homeschooled her kids. And as we were looking at that, she kind of was like, well, how does this work? And a lot of the ideas that she thought of didn't work for the hours that she had available. So we really did have to play around with what she had available, what her skills were, and find something that aligned. So you can think this sounds great, but when you get into it, it might be exactly what you don't want or what doesn't fit. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I think more times than everything always looks greener on the other side. You
Yeah.
think this would be great to run a bakery. And then you start thinking about, well, I have to get up at 2 in the morning too. Like you just
Yeah.
start thinking about what your life will look like. And I think we can be choosy when we're starting that second act. So it's important to
Mm.
do that research.
Well, and I think it's so important to have someone to talk it through with because the work that I do with clients, we have to get clear on the vision. And oftentimes our vision has been so in those instances, they are often influenced by what you know, the limits of what you've seen or what other people around you have done. And there's a whole lot more out there available to you. And so having someone who's outside of your circle, outside of your, you know, kind of day to day to work through and build a vision that is beyond what you think you can.
Yeah. Right, because sometimes your close circle are your yes men. Either yes or no, right? Either way, it could be
Mhm.
like, "No, don't do that, it's risky," or, "Yeah, you're amazing, you can do anything," and
Yeah.
but not knowing what the day-to-day is. So you're absolutely right. Having someone like you too to just say, "Okay, well, this is what it'll look like, for 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road, is this what you want?"
Yeah,
And,
and
kind of paint that picture.
yes, and with all of your experience with various businesses, that gives your client too when you see that list, I'm sure sometimes you see something that they hadn't thought of that you just as an idea, just have you ever considered kind of
Yeah, yeah, and
yeah.
I like that because it's like and I've also like I've owned brick and mortar through my franchise, and so even talking I've had a lot of conversations with, service-based business owners who
Mhm.
are doing great, and they're going to people's homes, and they're going here, and they talk about wanting that brick and mortar, and I can tell them how it was
Right.
and what, my experience was just to give them that extra, like, education from someone who had it. So, yeah, I think the more you can lean on someone like you or I, the further you'll go with just that education piece and knowing, what could happen or how you can avoid certain, challenges or mishaps.
Yeah, it avoids limiting your own possibilities, putting possibility limits on yourself, and it also reduces the pie in the sky, like the blind to all the potential obstacles, because
Yeah.
there's a beautiful marriage of both. We wanna see it all, and we don't wanna close off to any of it, so we're making the best decision for us at the time and, yeah, not being
Yeah.
surprised and bulldozed by some of those things
Yeah.
that you can
I
catch ahead of time.
for sure.
So tell us, what does a second really mean to you now?
I think it means taking everything you've done, everything that you love to do, and merging it into this second act career, life, business that really fulfills you. And it's the idea of knowing that we get this one life and not wanting regrets later on and saying, "Let me try it. It's just a new adventure." It's taking what I am good at and what I know and what I enjoy and merging it into a different way of living and a way that hopefully will give you that freedom and flexibility that you might be looking for. Or maybe it's financial freedom or fulfillment, whatever it is that you want in this next act. Yeah, I just really am big on not putting it off. So many
Yeah,
times we put things off and we put things off and just try. And you know what? You can always go back. You're still that person from your first act. So if it
right?
doesn't work out, you can go back.
When you think about the women you work with, what do you notice where self-trust may be lacking the most when they're considering this change?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think a lot of it is that self-trust and just the biggest fear I always see is what will other people think
Mhm.
and not having the support of those around you. And I just did a podcast episode this week about, when your partner is miserable at their job, and you are feeling guilty about wanting to change, like, what do you do? So there's a lot of that, I think, fear of the outside world and what others will think and how, we're so used to, especially as women, running everything and being in
Mhm.
charge and putting others first. And so I think I know a lot of my clients fear that by them starting something, they're going to cause chaos in their life for others. And so it's getting past that fear and saying, you don't have to quit your job tomorrow. Let's make a plan for 6 months, a year, whatever it is, and make it work strategically. You're not going to empty the bank account. You're going to do things really methodically. I'm really big on it not happen. You don't have to just circle a date on the calendar and quit and just figure it out. You're going to figure it out methodically and we're going to do it together so that you feel confident. And then you can look at people who might be kind of a naysayer around you or feeling that fear, and you can say, "No, I'm good. I did my research. I know I've got this." And
Right.
that's a great feeling.
Absolutely. The more that we're just rooted in our decisions, people can think anything they want or say what they want, which they do, by the way. We don't have control over that.
True.
But it becomes less of a fear when we trust ourselves enough to, this is my decision and I am going to be okay on the other side of it, whether it works exactly as I want, not exactly as I want and better, or, the millions of different opportunities that can happen. So,
At
yes,
least you'll know, right? Either way, at least you'll know and you'll never have that regret,
right. What a beautiful gift to give yourself. Is this just
right?
knowing I went for it?
Yeah,
I think it's
right?
the biggest gift.
I agree.
So, for those who are resonating with your story and your work, tell us who you're working with now, how they can connect with you, and we'll make sure everything's in the show notes.
Thank you. Yeah, I work with women who really want to leave that 9 to 5 and start a business, and whether you have an idea or not. And I do work with some men too. So it's just, really whoever, finding your person. But
Mm,
yeah, everything is at secondactsuccess.co. And you can even book a free strategy call with me. That's the best way to really get to talk out your plan. And even if it's not a great fit, you'll have a little bit of insight and clarity
mm.
into what you can do next.
Shannon, thank you so much for sharing your story and your
Thank
perspective today. I love how your journey shows that self trust isn't about having everything figured out ahead of time. It's about being willing to choose yourself, even when the next chapter isn't fully written. And for those of you listening, if something in Shannon's story resonated, you can find all of her links and resources in the show notes. You can learn more about her work and book that strategy call. If you have a self trust story to share, I'd love to hear it. And if you're ready to create your own, I'd love to help you claim it. Visit theselftrustcoach.com or click the link in the show notes for details. And of course, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of the incredible stories ahead. And I'll see you next week. Shannon, thank you so much.
thank you, Dawn.